download folder, Ajahn.
Sorry?
In your download folder.
Download, okay. This is...
Where the Buddha black? In black.
Sorry, in the black one. Got the black one there. Right here. Let's be the other one. Okay, let's go back
No,
in.
not documents. Download.
It's good. It's all cheap.
It's download. Storage. Related. Yeah, download, yeah. Oh, the Buddha in black.
Okay, good.
Then Wi-Fi on.
That's not Wi-Fi, that's my one, that's the Wi-Fi. That's server in my room.
No, this one connects to the...
Okay, it does, okay. Turns me off then.
Yeah. And then...
Right,
Smart
yeah.
view. Oh, it's not connected yet. Wi-Fi. Yeah, good. You're on.
Yay, well done. Okay, go at me.
Does the microphone come from here? Is that
Okay.
I changed the gain on it.
That's okay.
How do you know the gain is from?
You can see the meter.
There. Which one is it? Number 4 or number 1?
No, it's number 1.
Number 1, so the rest of it could be on 0. So it's only 1.
What's the number? This one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's on. That's on 0. I don't know. It was on 0. Okay.
But it should be.
Where did you have this thing?
Oh boy.
I can't remember exactly. That's about 5.5.
Yeah, that's mine 5.5. That one I can't remember.
Hey, that's not the one in black.
In the download folder, Ajahn.
Yeah, it was there but it disappeared. Word of the Buddha.
Is it a bit out of focus? Or is it just my eye?
This is. Hello, where's it gone? Didn't have a photo. Down here before. Where?
Should be near the top.
It was down here before. Top. Oh, right, there we go. Okay, now I've got to go right down the bottom again.
The side bar, you can move the side bar.
6.
Really?
Down the bottom there.
You need a
Deformatted this.
You need a different reader.
Yeah.
Close.
Just patience. It's the highest virtue. Be close.
Yep.
Yep, Nibbana Swanapana Sati. Here we go. Okay. Now decide to sneeze. Quite not too good. I haven't found it. Okay. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So, welcome to the word of the Buddha. These tracts from the suttas, rearranged into different categories, and also retranslated. For those of you who haven't heard the translation before, it is taking away a lot of the repetition. Some words are different than what you've heard before, and so we translate them to make it much closer to the Pali. So anyway, this is Nibbana Swanapana with all of the 8 factors of the Eightfold Path. The 7th factor was what I talked about last week. And this is, again, re-looking at this through Anapanasati and what the Buddha said. This is the Anapanasati Sutta. So here we go. When mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated, it is of great fruit and great benefit. When mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated, it completes the 4 focuses of mindfulness. When the 4 focuses of mindfulness are developed and cultivated, they complete the 7 enlightenment factors. When the 7 enlightenment factors are developed and cultivated, they complete true knowledge and deliverance, enlightenment. Now, first of all, if you haven't heard me say focuses of mindfulness before, it's at the foundations of mindfulness. Mindfulness can be used for anything, but when it is focused on these 4 things, which the Buddha said, then it pushes you towards the path of enlightenment. So the meaning of it, as far as I'm concerned, is the focuses of mindfulness. The foundations of mindfulness is basically the other 6 factors of the Eightfold Path that cultivates the mindfulness, and also some stillness as well. So what does it mean here? But first of all, Nibbana through Anapanasati, this is a common thing which we quote, that the Anapanasati is, practice it properly, it is the same as practicing the Satipatthana. And just saying that because some people think that Vipassana is one thing, Vipassana equals Satipatthana, Samatha is another thing, and that's called Anapanasati. And here there's the Buddha saying the 2 are basically the same. So, mindfulness of breathing completes the 4 focuses of mindfulness. How does mindfulness of breathing, developed and cultivated, complete the 4 focuses of mindfulness? When the in-breath and out-breath are long and you are aware they are long, when the in-breath and out-breath are short and you are aware that they are short, when you learn to experience the whole of the breath as you breathe in and out, when you learn to calm the breath as you breathe in and out, On those are the occasions you are mindful of the body, having restrained the 5 hindrances, energized, fully aware of the purpose and mindful. In and out breathing is regarded by the Buddha as a body, kaya, in the category of bodies. That is why on that occasion a meditator abides mindful of the body, having restrained the 5 hindrances, energized, fully aware of the purpose and mindful. If you haven't heard me say this before, you forgot last week, you may notice a few things there which are different. Instead of when you're breathing in a long breath, you know you're breathing in a long breath. When you're breathing in a short breath, you know you're breathing in a short breath. When you're breathing in a long breath, you know you're breathing in a long breath. When you're breathing out a long breath, you know you're breathing out a long breath. I don't know why people keep translating it like that. What it means. When the in-breath and out-breath are long, you're aware they're long. In-breath and out-breath are short, you're aware they're short. In other words, retranslating it, not word for word, but phrase by phrase. And that's what I got from Professor Warder. Taught me how to translate. And also that the third of the Anapanasati, when you learn to experience the whole of the breath, sabakaya patisangvedi. Now, there's still many people keep on saying that that means that when you are breathing in and breathing out, you know the body at the same time. And of course, that is unnatural if you just allow the meditation to go in its own way, just calming down and calming down. Of course, as I said last week, you see the breath go in, out, but then you see the whole of the breath go in and go out. You don't miss parts of it. Your focus is getting much more refined. And that's why sabakaya patisangvedi means you see the whole of the breath. And in this sutta, the Buddha makes it absolutely clear. Because in and out breathing is regarded by the Buddha as a body. That's what is kaya, in the category of kayas. That is why on that occasion the meditates, abides mindful of the body, and of course to be satipatthana, having restrained the 5 hindrances. That's lokya bija dhammanasa. Energized, fully aware of the purpose and mindful. Why do I keep doing that? Yeah. When you learn to experience joy as you breathe in and out, piti. When you learn to experience pleasure as you breathe in and out. When you learn to experience the mental formation of piti sukha as you breathe in and out, that's citta sankhara. When you learn to calm this mental formation of piti sukha as you breathe in and out, on those occasions you are mindful of experience. This is Vedana, my translation of experience, of Vedana, experience, rather than the type of experience. Having restrained the 5 hindrances, energized, fully aware of the purpose and mindful. For being mindful of the pleasure associated with this stage of breath meditation is being mindful of experience. That is why on that occasion the meditator abides mindful of experience. Having restrained the 5 hindrances, energized, fully aware of the purpose and mindful. And, an important point in this, I said this to people last week, you pick out that you're experiencing the mental formation. It's a citta sankhara of piti sukha as you breathe in and out. So here the bodily sensation, which is a kaya sankhara, that is almost disappearing, and the mental formation, the citta sankhara, the joy and happiness, is what you're experiencing. The joy and happiness on the breath is formed by the mind. When you learn to experience the citta as you breathe in and out, the Pali says citta, and of course how can that, what are you actually experience? And most meditation teachers notice that that is what we call the nimitta, the beautiful light which appears when you are experiencing the mental formation. Piti sukha is coming up in the last 4 stages, and now the citta is being experienced as a beautiful light in the mind. When you learn to experience a citta as you breathe in and out, when you learn to brighten the nimitta, bring joy to the nimitta as you breathe in and out, when you learn to settle the nimitta, still it, that's samadhang, cittang, as you breathe in and out, when you learn to enter jhana, they call it liberate the citta, vimoccayang. And that is usually in other cases always referring to the vimokkha's of jhana. When you learn to enter jhana as you breathe in and out. On those occasions you are mindful of the citta. The citta, the mind, the other five senses are not operative now. Or if they are operating at all, they're really in the background, starting to disappear. Having restrained the five hindrances, energized, fully aware of the purpose and mindful. I do not say that there is development of mindfulness of breathing for one who is dull, who is not fully aware. And I mention this because reaching a jhana with the hindrances gone, that's really full awareness. That is why on that occasion the meditator abides mindful of the mind, having restrained the five hindrances, energized, fully aware of the purpose and mindful. When you learn to explore impermanence in breath meditation, and as you know from last week, never say contemplate, to explore it. When you learn to explore things fading away in breath meditation, when you learn to explore things ceasing in breath meditation, when you learn to explore relinquishing things in breath meditation, on these occasions you are mindful of mind objects. That's the last four of the Anapanasati. To the impermanence, the anicca, fading away, viraga, ceasing, nirodha, and relinquishing. Those occasions you are mindful of mind objects, the Dhamma, having restrained the five hindrances, energized, fully aware of the purpose and mindful. Having seen with wisdom the impermanence, fading away, cessation, and relinquishing of the relinquishment there's of the five hindrances, of the opposite to the five hindrances. Oh, that's right. Sorry, that's correct. Having seen with wisdom the impermanence, fading away, cessation, and relinquishment of the five hindrances, you are mindful with equanimity. Or sometimes I've been saying contentment instead of equanimity, but either one will do. That is why on that occasion you are mindful of mind objects, having restrained the five hindrances, energized, fully aware of the purpose and mindful. That is how mindfulness of breathing, developed and cultivated, completes the four focuses of mindfulness. Questions?
Ajahn, you say when you learn to explore. Do you mean to say when you learn to explore without thinking?
Exactly, it's another word instead of contemplating, which is always thinking. And for those who haven't seen me do this before, I just lift up something. What is this? You stop naming it. And so you explore it, and so you go beyond what you've been taught. To actually to see something you haven't focused on before. And so sometimes you keep on looking at this until you see it in a totally different way. See something you've never seen it used before. I don't know, as a hat. I don't know, or to keep the papers down or something. In other words, to contemplate things doesn't mean thinking about it, because thinking just goes over a field which has already been mown and reaped and fossicked for so long. You do something else, you go to a different field. You use a different technique to actually see much deeper, not what you've been taught, but to contemplate it, to hold it with stillness and see more deeply into it.
What's the Pali word what's the Pali word?
Contemplate. No.
You got the Pali there?
Yes, I should know that one. It's in here. You know, this is a very good invention, a book. Yeah. Well, it's Dhamma Vichaya. To tell where we are, yeah. Dhamma Vichaya.
Bhante, with all the different stanzas, even the one for Piti Sukha and experiencing the mind, and also contemplation, I remember the refrain from Vicky Bodhi's translation, breathing in and breathing out. Every one of them is like that. And I'm just wondering, especially when you're getting to a nimitta stage, can you be breathing in, breathing out? Maybe with
you are breathing in and breathing out, but your mindfulness is on the nimitta. You are, even the page I have up here now, you are mindful of mind objects, the Dhamma. You're not mindful of the breath coming in and going out.
that's the body, isn't it?
Yeah. So the breath has done its job. As I mentioned to you many times, you came all the way from Melbourne in an aircraft. But you cannot park the aircraft in the Dhamma hall. You've got to get out of the aircraft and lose another means of transport. And you do that in a car until you get here, and then you get out of the car, you come into the front of the hall, you take your shoes off. Each different form of transport can only go so far. And this is each one of these.
Does the Pali give the breathing in?
No, it's as you're breathing in and breathing out. It doesn't say you're mindful of the breathing in and breathing out.
That is quite a good distinction.
Ajahn, well, we have everywhere this, you learn to experience. What do you mean to learn by experience?
Well, I'd say like you experience, like, say you Patisang Wedi, which is like an experience. But how can you, you don't do the experience. You allow experience to occur and develop. So by saying to learn to experience, learn to say, I just got number 3 up here. You learn to brighten the nimitta, bring joy to the nimitta. You learn to settle the nimitta. You learn to enter jhana. How does that happen? And of course, you've been listening to me for so many years. If you do something, you destroy the process. You're interrupting it. You've got to be still. So to find a nice word, to experience a citta. How do you experience a citta? You don't do it. It's not an action. It's what happens when you let go, you renounce, and the citta, the mind, is there for you.
Simple question.
Yeah?
Maybe this is mixing up verbs and nouns, but you use learn to experience, and I think that's in place of the word Vedana.
No, this is Padisang Vedati. Experience is likely the Vedana. That's a noun. Just learn to experience, learn to feel, learn to know. Even like Padisang Vedati and Vedana, the connections there.
The purpose, the word purpose, everywhere is the purpose as well. What's the purpose of all of these things?
It's meant to get enlightened. So the purpose is, that's actually sampajanya. Why are you doing this? To get powers? To get prestige? To take over the Sangha as Devadatta tried to do?
So, sampajanya, but that would be a fully aware of it instead of purpose.
This is knowing the purpose.
Knowing the purpose.
Yeah.
Ajahn, I'm still curious about the translation of Vedana as experience.
Great.
Are you saying in the kind of practical application not to pay attention to the quality, whether it's pleasurable, painful or neutral, it's just experience? Is that the sort of
Experience, if you want to make it easier in a sense, it could be more difficult to know it's a long breath or a short breath or an in-between breath. But sometimes to know whether it's a pleasant experience, unpleasant experience, or in between, that is actually complex sometimes, because sometimes it's really pleasant, sometimes it's sort of pleasant, sometimes a bit of in between. Sometimes it's pleasant but unpleasant at the same time. Pleasant through one of the sense doors and unpleasant through one of the other sense doors. So a lot of the time that's complex. To make it, I think, much more relevant, you just call it experience, just Vedana. And Vedana has the three main types. You get the breath, knowing the breath. Yeah, you got in-breath and out-breath and no-breath maybe. But just call it breath. I found it more useful, and I think it's valid. Just like the same way as people translate vijnana as consciousness. And vijnana is a single noun, single abstract noun. But it still is defined by the Buddha as the 6 different types of consciousness. And by translating them as consciousnesses, that makes it far more instructive when people listen to it. Otherwise, consciousness is something which is set apart from everything else. But when consciousness is mind consciousness. We say mind consciousness and all the other 5 consciousnesses on an equal footing. That sort of is a much more powerful statement and more accurate, I think, to what the Buddha meant.
And Bhante, do you think experience gets away from the other meanings of feeling? Because feeling often means emotion. So
it does indeed, yeah. It does.
Depression.
Yeah. This is always going to be the case because we have like an English language used to translate the Pali Sanskrit. And there's always going to be some difficulties there. That's why much of this stuff you get from reading in Pali, learning Pali. And then sort of it tends to open up much more. You don't get distracted, by the English translations. Even now, like just one of the things which I had to learn when I was in Thailand is Thai and Lao. And there are some words there which you can't translate it into English. I haven't found a word which is good enough for that. One of those is sabai. Just one word like that, just very powerful. Sabai. And I have yet to find a word which is equivalent. So that's one of the reasons why that we always do have some difficulties in translations. But I'm going from years of teaching, years of understanding Pali, being with good teachers and good meditation. So here with the nimittas, to brighten the nimitta, it says bring joy to the citta. That's what it says in the Pali. And to actually bring joy to the citta, you don't sort of make it funny. You just brighten it so it gets brighter and easier to see and more powerful, more happiness. The same way as to settle them to samadhahang. This is samadhi, the stillness, to make that nimitta, the citta, settle down so it stops moving. And that's actually when the jhanas start to happen.
Ajahn, excuse me. Can I ask you a thing?
Yes, Ali.
On this third point, when you learn to settle the nimitta,
Yeah?
as you breathe in and out, so I'm sorry if I'm
Yeah.
asking the same question it asked before. Like, do you just let go of your focus on your breathing and
Yes.
breathe out and just focus on the nimitta, that's it?
Well, actually, no. You don't do anything. You don't make those decisions. It's not your choice. This is the natural process. So, once in the second stage, the piti and sukha starts to come up with the breath. So, after a while, the piti sukha, it takes over. In fact, the joy is so strong that sometimes you can't even tell the difference between an in-breath and an out-breath. At that stage of the Anapanasati Sutta, which is this breath happening right in this moment. It's joyful, peaceful, and sometimes it looks different. Just the same way as when, who was the last person? When Tim became a samanera, he comes in the room, he looks different. He's wearing a brown robe now. And there's something about that, oh yeah, that's Tim, yeah. But at first, sometimes, the lay people who come here every week couldn't recognize him. After a while you do. But this is why that when you're now seeing your breathing through the second sense door, sorry, that's the one I want to talk about, through the chitta sankhara, the Vedana of it, rather than through the body. You're seeing these things through different things. It's a chitta sankhara you're seeing. So it's not the breath as you normally know it. The same with the third of the tetrad, seeing the chitta. And this is, the qualifies as being the third satipatthana. You're seeing it as a mind, not as a breath. The breath has done its job, it's transforming. It's taking you out of the five sense world into the sixth sense. And to be able to do that, first of all, you understand this nimitta. And sometimes when this first happens to people, you've heard me say before, you see the nimitta, but you can still feel the breath. It's like the breath and the nimitta are deciding which one is going to dominate. And of course you don't choose either, because that just disturbs it. You just totally be an observer with not doing anything. And if you have enough letting go, then you find that the nimitta will dominate. And like the breath tends to sort of vanish away, goes distant from you. And it's just you're focusing on a citta, especially because it's beautiful. You just, other stuff, it's just like, I don't know, I've heard tales of people playing football and they break a leg, they can't feel the leg because they just focus on something else which is dominating their mind. And it's the same way with what happens when the mind can focus just on this nimitta and the breath is just still breathing in and breathing out, but the awareness of it is disappearing. Make sense? And it's another nice thing to say, it's not something you do. It's something which happens. And these are like landmarks on the journey. And that's why it fulfills the four satipatthana, not just the first one. Not just kaya, but vedana, citta and Dhamma. Okay. 4 focuses of mindfulness complete the 7 enlightenment factors. This is not so controversial because many people think they can do this just by thinking about it. How do 4 focuses of mindfulness, developed and cultivated, complete the 7 enlightenment factors? When you are mindful of the body, having restrained the 5 hindrances, energized, fully aware of the purpose and mindful, on that occasion steady mindfulness is established in you. On whatever occasion steady mindfulness is established in you, on that occasion the mindfulness enlightenment factor is aroused in you. Just aroused. You develop it, and by development it comes to fulfillment in you. And this is one of those places, and they're very rare in the suttas, where it does point out that mindfulness is aroused, but you have to develop it, and by development it comes to fulfillment in you. You get stronger and stronger. When you are thus mindful, you explore the Dhamma with wisdom. On whatever occasion, abiding thus mindful, you explore the Dhamma with wisdom. On that occasion, the exploration of Dhamma enlightenment factor is aroused in you, and develop it, and by development it comes to fulfillment in you. And what actually, this is one thing which I did get from Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi in one of his introductions, I think to the Mahanidana Sutta, Dependent Origination. And he said the essential meaning of Dhamma, the core meaning of it, is like the source of things, where things come from, why they come here. And it's always opposed in Pali to the word atta, it's where they go to. What's the consequence of these things? So you can actually see that the Dhamma is the cause. Why? And atta is what happens afterwards. And so, explore Dhamma with wisdom is like, why? Why do hindrances come up? Where do they come from? why do thoughts come up? So exploring, and that's also, Venerable Chanda was asked this question a couple of days ago. This is where Yonisa Manasikara comes in. Going to the right, people sometimes call it the right exploration, if you like, right, but I sometimes translate it to literally work of the mind, which goes back to the source, the womb, the yoni. In other words, you go into the cause of things, where they come from. And that is an important part of Buddha's teaching. You're exploring the Dhamma with wisdom, not of what's the nature of bricks, or what is the extent of this universe. But you're exploring the Dhamma and say, why? Where does it all come from? And it's not just stuff; it's the mind. When you explore the Dhamma with wisdom and embark upon a full inquiry into it, unflagging energy is aroused in you. On whatever occasion unflagging energy is aroused in you, explore Dhamma with wisdom. On that occasion the energy enlightenment factor is aroused in you, and you develop it, and by development it comes to fulfillment in you. And just of course, that when you do have strong mindfulness, people sometimes thought, wow, crikey, I'm going to get tired out. But those who get full, strong mindfulness, which is supported by stillness, in other words, the five hindrances becoming very, very weak, the energy is huge. Which is one of the reasons why that many of you, when you get a good meditation, you can't sleep that night. And sometimes your energy is really strong for days. Sometimes that you find even if you're on retreat, your sleep time gets really low down. It's natural. You're not forcing anything. It's just quite natural. The energy starts to come up. And as I mentioned from the Nalaka Panna Sutta, that when the five hindrances are suppressed or restrained, then you get Tandi and Arati also get abolished or weakened. And Tandi is weariness, Arati is discontent. So you have no discontent there, and also you get energy. And when you have aroused energy, unworldly joy, the piti arises. On whatever occasion unworldly joy arises, on that occasion the joy enlightenment factor is aroused in you. And you develop it, and by development it comes to fulfillment in you. Getting strong happiness. When you experience unworldly joy, your body and mind become tranquil. That's always a strange one, first of all. You get strong joy, your body and mind become tranquil, then you want to jump up and down and punch the air and do a dance and a few cartwheels. Now this is the unworldly joy, the piti. You become, and it's because of joy, therefore the body can just relax. It doesn't need to do anything. It becomes incredibly relaxed. And same with the mind. The mind is satisfied. So a lot of times people think a lot because of dissatisfaction. They've got no joy and they go searching for things. Or they become tired because of past searching. So you get bodily tranquility. Your body and mind become tranquil. On whatever occasion the body and mind become tranquil, you experience joy, sukha. On that occasion the tranquility factor is aroused in you, and you develop it, and by development it comes to fulfillment in you. When your body is tranquil and you feel pleasure in the mind becomes still. Samadhi. On whatever occasion the mind becomes still and joyful, on that occasion the stillness enlightenment factor is aroused in you, and you develop it, and by development it comes to fulfillment in you. And this is one of the important points here, that elsewhere the Buddhist said, Sukhino chitang samadhiyati. From happiness, from that sukha, the mind becomes still. And of course the word stillness here, samadhi, not concentrated. That doesn't ever feel right. Concentrated is what you do. Stillness is when things aren't moving anymore. And you're incredibly mindful. And you observe such a still mind with equanimity. To be able to observe it, to be mindful of it, means you are fully aware. On that occasion, the equanimity, enlightenment factor is aroused in you, and you develop it, and by development it comes to fulfillment in you. And that's one of the other reasons why I didn't really like the equanimity meaning, because equanimity in the three types of Vedana is in between Sukha Vedana and Dukkha Vedana. And if you get into a jhana, you still mind with equanimity. That's not equanimity in the middle, that's really high Sukha. Incredible strong Sukha. So that's one of the reasons I thought contentment might be a bit less controversial word. That is how the four focuses of mindfulness developed and cultivated complete the 7 enlightenment factors. And here you develop the mindfulness enlightenment factor. Okay. Here you develop the mindfulness enlightenment factor, which is supported by seclusion, physical, mental. And they always say that when they talk about the enlightenment factors, supported by seclusion. And it's not just physical seclusion, it's mental seclusion. Seclusion from other people, and also mental seclusion. Seclusion from a lot of time is thinking. Fading away in cessation, and ripens in relinquishment. You let go of things. That's how you know it really was real enlightenment factors. You relinquish things, give up things. You develop the exploration of Dhamma enlightenment factor, the energy enlightenment factor, the joy enlightenment factor, the tranquility enlightenment factor, the stillness enlightenment factor, the equanimity enlightenment factor, which is supported by seclusion, fading away in cessation, and ripens in relinquishment. That is how the 7 enlightenment factors developed and cultivated complete true knowledge and deliverance, full enlightenment. Questions?
Ajahn, this might help me, so I hope it's not too silly a question either. Would a quantum physicist ever measured how many moments of consciousness there may be in a second? So if we got a sense of like how much speed is going on, you've helped us by saying go to stillness and drop that thinking, but in my era, we've been asked to overthink to do the kind of jobs, and we probably don't realise there's so much of that needs to be dropped. Yeah,
it's in quantum physics you get like Planck time, and you can't sort of get smaller than that. It doesn't make any sense at all. But then you get neurophysicists say that even much more time, many Planck time moments, that we have just the attention. How long do you actually need to be able to observe something? And it's just almost like to do with the neurophysics, not the neurophysics, but the chemistry of the brain. You see a sight, it's a chemical reaction in the back of the eye, and if it goes too quickly, you can't make any sense of it. You try and guess, but sometimes you get it wrong. It's not that much. But anyway, it's really quite irrelevant as far as I'm concerned. Yeah?
Two questions. The first one, trivial. Where was section 7 where does it come from in the sutras? It's not mentioned in the margin.
Section 7, which one's that?
All of that. Where does it, there's no reference here to where it comes from, where its source is.
Oh right, yeah, there is no.
At least there isn't in the version.
No, yeah, you're right.
What?
It doesn't have the reference on this, there's no reference where it comes from.
It's the Anapanasati Sutta.
Yeah.
No.
It's all MN 118.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Anapanasati Sutta.
Second question. In the equanimity factor,
Oh yeah.
supported by seclusion fading away,
Ah,
cessation.
yeah.
Well, seclusion, presumably in this case, is impermanent, and that eventually the seclusion will go. Won't it? Is the seclusion permanent or impermanent?
It's things which stop, which were once there are not there again, have the opportunity of being long-lasting, even permanent.
And so the same response, the same reply would apply to...
It fades away.
And all the others.
Yeah.
Right. So they may or may not be long-lasting.
Unless they are fully developed and they become long-lasting at the Parisesa Nibbana.
Parisesa?
The Parisesa Nibbana, with things remaining, the 5 khandhas remaining, the person becomes an arahat. And then the other thing is they pass away and there's nothing remaining. That's called Aparisesa Nibbana. And Aparisesa, that's what it means in Pali. It's all gone. That's coming up soon. But now...
Ajahn, can I ask quickly?
Yeah.
With this, I sort of always struggled with these 7, there's the enlightenment factors, like, why are they explained? Are they sort of like a, this is how you should be practicing, or what's the...
No. I think what you should be practicing is weakening the 5 hindrances until they disappeared. But this is what happens. It's like the 5 hindrances are the enemies of the enlightenment factors. When the 5 hindrances disappear, the enlightenment factors appear.
Right. Okay.
It's a nice way of putting it. And those two are just, almost, if you want to say Buddhism in brief to someone, 5 enlightenment factors, so 5 hindrances, see if you can reject those, or find a way that they don't arise, restrain them. And the 7 enlightenment factors, then they will appear. You become mindful. You become sort of explore things. It's the nature of human beings to explore. And all those other things will happen. Anyway, jhanas. I was just itching to go to these. Light stillness. And again, not concentration. There's many reasons for that. Majjhima 36. I remember a time when my father was occupied while I was sitting in the cool shade of a rose apple tree, having passed beyond the 5 senses and free from unwholesome states. I entered and abided in the first jhana, and I thought, could that be the path to enlightenment, to Bodhi? Then the realization arose that jhana is indeed the path to enlightenment. And that was the Buddha's quest after abandoning his first 5 disciples. And then just still not enlightened, still a bodhisattva, and then exactly finding that the one thing he hadn't done yet was the jhanas. And also like here, it's beyond the 5 senses, free from unwholesome states. 5 senses have to disappear. So what are the 4 jhanas? Having abandoned 5 hindrances, totally free from the 5 senses, free from unwholesome states, the hindrances, you enter upon and abide in the first jhana, wherein the mind moves onto the object and holds onto it, the object being joy and pleasure caused by being totally free from the 5 senses. And that is the Vitakka Vichara translation, which you base that on, I can't really say, but I know I'm very close to a monk who, that's how he experiences it. And it's also, that is how the Visuddhimagga describes it. They use the simile there that the Vitakka is like hitting the bell, and Vichara is the resonance of the bell after it's been rung. And so here, the mind is not thinking, thinking's gone a long time ago. There you go, it's the joy and pleasure caused by being totally free from the 5 senses, incredible joy. That is the main object of your meditation at that time. And of course it's so powerful that sometimes it's a bit unstable. So because it's unstable, so the mind moves away from it. This is just a metaphor. And then the mind goes back onto it, gets drawn back in. So this is what I've often called the wobble of the first jhana. And of course you all know that there was 1.5 jhanas in between the first and the second jhana, where the piti sukha is strong, and you are still, your confidence in being able to just disappear is strong. So you're letting go a little bit more, so that the mind doesn't move away from the object, it's right inside of it, but you're holding on to it. But your holding on to it is not that strong, not enough to disturb it. Vichara still there, vichara still there, no vichara. And once that confidence builds up, then of course, there's no vichara, no vichara. You're in that bliss, and it's the bliss course of stillness. I'll come on to that in a moment. But the Buddha really did mention the 1.5 jhana between the first and the second, but really I would say it belongs to the second jhana. In the first jhana, 5 things are absent and 5 factors are present. When one has entered the first jhana, the 5 hindrances are totally absent. And what is present? The mind moves on to the object, holds on to it, that's the vitakka vichara. The object being joy and pleasure, and there is oneness of mind. Akata.
Oneness of mind.
Yeah. One big peak of mind. Because aga is like agra, it means a peak.
Before, sorry, quickly. So when it moves away from the first jhana, does it move towards the nimitta? Does it move into the light?
This is just a way of looking at it. The experience of piti sukha wobbles. That's the nicest way of looking at it.
Yeah, but it doesn't.
The spatial context is not really there.
I know, but the nimitta, because you're moving from nimitta to the first jhana. And
I see what you mean.
That's us disappearing. But when you sort of, are you moving back towards the nimitta?
It's nothing. The nimitta is just not really perceived.
Yeah.
Which it's not totally still. Just piti sukha is a constant thing of the mind, and that is your object. But the piti sukha increases, decreases.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So the light.
The stillness is not.
Yeah.
You don't see a light anymore.
Yeah.
The nimitta's gone. It's done its job. Number 2. When the mind no longer moves onto the object because it lets go of holding onto it, they call that sampasadanang. You have total confidence in the thing. You enter upon and abide in the second jhana, which has got trust in the object. The bliss, enough to let go of holding it. So you don't hold it, it just stays there without you holding it. And unity of mind without any movement or holding, with joy and pleasure caused by absolute stillness. So again, it's a different type of blissing out. And this is that the mind doesn't move. It's samadhahang, the joy of samadhi, of stillness, no movement. I've also mentioned that's one place where you come out afterwards and you know that there's no will there, nothing to make the mind move. With the fading away of joy, you abide mindful and fully aware, experiencing a bliss purified from joy. Weird, isn't it? You think that joy is a wonderful thing, but then when it disappears, it's even more wonderful. You enter upon and abide in the third jhana, on account of which noble ones announce, one has a pleasant abiding indeed, who has such mindfulness and equanimity. And, having abandoned pleasure and pain, which is all the Vedana from the 5 senses, and with the disappearance of joy and unhappiness, which is all the Vedana from the 6th sense, except for equanimity, you enter upon and abide in the 4th jhana, which is only neutral mental Vedana, deep contentment, peace, whatever you wish to call it, remaining just pure mindfulness with equanimity. And I always make a point of emphasizing pure mindfulness. You can't get higher mindfulness than that in the fourth jhana. And I mention that because sometimes people say, oh, just in these jhanas you lose all your mindfulness. And just mention that's not what the Buddha said. And I'll just wait for a moment. Any questions on that so far, on the nature of the jhanas? Okay, I'll carry on. And what kind of meditation did the Buddha recommend? This is Gopika Moggallana Sutta. Totally free from the five senses, you abide in the first jhana. When the mind stops moving on to the joy and pleasure and stops holding it, you abide in the second jhana. With the fading away of joy, you abide in the third jhana. With the abandoning of all mental pleasant and unpleasant vedana, you abide in the fourth jhana. The Buddha only praised these four kinds of meditation. And I mentioned that there. It makes a very strong point. Gopika Moggallana Sutta. It was just after the Buddha passed away that Gopika Moggallana went over to see Ananda, who was the go-to person, for authentic Buddhist teachings. He was the one they asked. The Buddha's passed away now, so it must have been just in those few months after the Buddha's parinibbana, but before the first council. And all the other monks agreed on it, so it was put in the suttas. What type of meditation did the Buddha recommend? He only praised four types, four jhanas. Now, this is one of my other favorite ones. There are chunda, these four kinds of life devoted to pleasure. It's Madhya Nikaya, Pasadika Sutta. There are these four kinds of life devoted to pleasure that are entirely conducive to nibbida, repulsion. The fading away, cessation, peace, realization, enlightenment to nibbana. What are they? The four jhanas. So if devotees of other sects should say that the Buddhists are addicted to these four forms of pleasure seeking, they should be told yes. I like that, because when I first read it, oh, that's good. You're addicted to pleasure seeking. You Buddhist monks, nuns, and other Buddhists. Yay! If devotees of other sects should say that Buddhists are addicted to these four forms of pleasure seeking, they should be told yes, for they'll be speaking correctly about you. Then some people might further ask you, what benefits can you expect from a life attached to these four forms of pleasure seeking? You should reply that they can expect only four fruits, four benefits. Stream winning, so one for you Sri Lankans. Stream winning, once returning, non-returning, or full enlightenment. These are the benefits you can expect from being attached to these four forms of pleasure seeking. That's what the Buddha said. Now, this is from the Malokyaputta Sutta. People often ask about him because, in the Bahaya Sutta, where it says that, just in the scene is just a scene, in the herd is just a herd. It doesn't mention jhanas in there, and Bahaya became fully enlightened. It doesn't mention mindfulness in there either. It became enlightened. It doesn't mention precepts in there. It became fully enlightened. What's going on? And of course, you have to go back to Bahia's previous life, find out what he was up to there. He was one of these monks who climbed up a mountain and they threw away the ladder. It was clearly enlightenment or bust. I think one became enlightened. Was it one or two? That's one. One became a non-returner, and Bahia was one who didn't. So he just died up there. But anyway, his mate, who was a non-returner, came and told him what he was doing was wrong. When he thought he was enlightened, so go and see the Buddha. But anyway, that same teaching of the Bahaya Sutta, in the scene is just the scene, in the herd just the herd, was also given to one other monk in the suttas. And that was Malokyaputta. you got the same teaching. And I mention that because Malunkyaputta also got this teaching. Where is it? Majjhima 68, Maha Malunkyaputta Sutta. Oh no, that's... No, sorry, that's 64. Yeah, sorry. There is one path only. Huh? Oh, that's right, this is another expression of this. There is one path only, Ananda, one way to the abandoning of the 5 basic fetters. This is also to Malunkyaputta. One path, the abandoning of the 5 basic fetters. Sometimes they call them the 5 lower fetters. But I don't know why they call them lower fetters, because they're not that low. You get rid of these things and you're just an anagami, a non-returner. So I just reject the idea of lower fetters and higher fetters, or basic fetters, or if you get a better word, fair enough, but I just reject lower. The 5 basic fetters. It is impossible that anyone can understand or abandon these 5 basic fetters without relying on that path. And I pause there even to understand what they actually are, let alone abandon them. No more than it is possible to cut out the heartwood from a tree without cutting through its bark and sapwood. What is that path? The 4 jhanas and the first 3 immaterial attainments. It's impossible, according to the Buddha. And this is Nalakapana Sutta. When you still do not experience jhana, the 5 hindrances, I mentioned this already, when you still do not experience jhana, the 5 hindrances, together with discontent and weariness, invade your mind and remain. When you do experience the jhana, the 5 hindrances, discontent and weariness, do not invade your mind and remain. When you have no jhana, for one deficient in jhana, the cause for seeing things as they truly are is destroyed. It's in the Anguttara. When you have no jhana, for one deficient in jhana, the cause for seeing things as they truly are is destroyed. You're not still enough. When you do not see things as they truly are, for one deficient in such wisdom, the cause for repulsion and fading away is destroyed. You're not moving away from things. When you're not repulsed nor inclined to disappearing, I like that, inclined to disappearing. You're not trying to be a big shot, you're just trying to get less. For one deficient in these, the cause for knowledge and vision of liberation is destroyed. Develop jhana. When you experience jhana, you can understand things as they really are. And what do you understand as it really is? The origin and passing away of form. The origin and passing away of experience. The origin and passing away of perception. The origin and passing away of will, sankhara. The origin and passing away of consciousnesses. 6 consciousnesses. And lastly, Dhammapada. There is no jhana for one without wisdom. There is no wisdom for one without jhana. For one who has both jhana and wisdom, they are in the presence of nibbana. Nati jhanang apanyasa. Panya nati ajayato. Yam hi jhanang cha panya cha. Soe nibbana santike. I love that. There's no jhana without wisdom. There's no wisdom without jhana. It's not a catch-22. A bit of wisdom here, a bit of meditation there, a bit more wisdom, a bit more meditation, a bit more stillness, a bit more understanding. And then when the two come together, for one who has both jhana and wisdom, they're in the presence of nibbana. Soe nibbana santike. Okay, so, comments, questions? I'll finish off this one then, because next week we're going to... Oh, did you have a question?
Yeah, there was something I was wondering about Ajahn.
Yeah?
Like why the Buddha only understood the significance of the jhanas, like at that point in the Mahasachika Sutta.
Ah.
You've been doing meditation before.
Do meditation before. But there's a couple of interesting points. I think you're asking this, you already know the answers for the sake of other people. One of those points was, the Buddha realized that to be able to get those jhanas again, he was a kid before. And he was just sitting under a tree. He wasn't doing anything which was ascetic. And once he decided to try those jhanas as a way to become enlightened, he realized he cannot enter those jhanas with a body which is so tired, hungry, weak. He needed to eat properly. He needed to bathe. He needed to rest a bit. Which is one of the reasons why his first 5 disciples abandoned him. They thought he'd given up the path. He wasn't being ascetic enough. If he can't get enlightened with all this asceticism, how on earth is he going to get enlightened just eating properly? And of course he did. And so once he did that, his first teaching, before even the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, well, it's the first part of the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, but before the first 4 Noble Truths, the first teaching he gave was the middle way. Avoid those extremes. Because he realized that too much asceticism just stops you getting into the deep meditations. And we always feel that in the holy life, especially being monks, we should either be whipping ourselves or fasting or just sleeping on the floor and just whatever it is. And sometimes people feel that the more ascetic you are, the closer you are to getting deep meditation. That's not the case. And that is a powerful teaching, that first, the middle way. It's not a small thing. And to find that balance there, where you don't overeat, you don't oversleep, you don't compensate your physical body, you look after your body enough so you can sit down, it can totally disappear. And that was something people didn't understand. So it's first, and of course that question, which if it hasn't come up yet, I'm sure it will come up soon, about, well, what about his first couple of teachers who taught him Alavakalama and Uddaka Ramaputta? And there we have a controversy there, an internal contradiction, because the Buddha actually said, these states do not lead to enlightenment. And afterwards he said they do, especially the state of, what was it, nothingness. So what's that contradiction there? And I think we're discussing that many times with many people. I think most people come to the conclusion that what those two were teaching was not the real arupa attainments, because the real arupas, these are the immaterial state of what they call infinite. So they call it sometimes infinite consciousness, but sometimes I think I translate it as boundless consciousness. It's like infinite but nothing at the same time. Using like mathematical stuff, that after a while infinite and nothing they're about to disappear. And infinite space, infinite consciousness, nothingness, what's happening there is your mind consciousness is vanishing, disappearing, fading away, until the state of neither perception or non-perception. He said that last one is too refined, so you can't use that as a base for full enlightenment. But anyway, the real ones have to be based on the 4th jhana. You can't just suddenly go from nothingness to the 3rd arupa or the 2nd arupa. People think they may be able to and just think, okay, infinite space. Oh yeah, take a few substances which were legal. I don't know that, I shouldn't be saying stuff like that. But actually, just by getting there without the stillness of mind, I don't think that's possible. And in the sutras are all based on the first 4 jhanas. So, why is it that when the Buddha started to feel what I needed to do to get enlightenment, nothing else is working? It was after being with those two teachers. He had to recall when he was a young kid, the time when he had the first jhana. That's what he had to do. So it is pretty suggestive, if not almost conclusive, that under those two teachers, Alarika, Kalama and Uddaka Ramaputta, they did not teach jhanas. Anyway.
Could it be that they didn't have right review of those two teachers?
It could be that, but it's also likely they didn't have the jhanas either. Even the Buddha, as a kid, the Bodhisattva, he didn't have a right view either. But he got the jhanas. Or one jhana anyway, as a kid, a 6-year-old.
But I wondered whether the Buddha, the Bodhisattva, didn't think of jhanas earlier because he thought of it as indulgence.
Yeah.
He seemed to have that, he was afraid, this is indulgence and this is not the way to enlightenment. You should really torture yourself.
Exactly.
The body and the mind, of course.
That's true, yes. That's why that I like doing that, not Nalakapana, the Pasadika Sutta. If other people say you're just indulging yourself, you say, yeah, confess it. But at least stream meaning once returning, non-returning, or for enlightenment. Okay, now this is very short, Nibbana. And it just...
Summing up, you just say it.
Oh, summing up.
Yeah. Oh, summing up, yeah. Noble Eightfold Path and then Nibbana. I've always wondered about the Noble Eightfold Path. Where's Nibbana in that? It's the path. This is the path. This is the result comes up afterwards. This is the middle way awakened to by the Buddha, which gives rise to vision, to knowledge, which leads to peace, direct knowledge to enlightenment and Nibbana. Enter then upon this path and you make an end of suffering. Oh. Nibbana. Come on. There we go. When you know and see thus, the mind is no longer pulled out into the world of the 5 senses. It is liberated from the wanting asava, or the karma asava, wanting something to do with the 5 senses. It is no longer flows out just to be. It is liberated from the being asava, the bhava asava. And no longer leaks out because of delusion. It is liberated from the avijja asava. When liberation occurs, the knowledge of liberation invariably follows. So in other words, when a person is liberated, free, enlightened, they don't just get enlightened and not know it. You're enlightened, you just don't realise it. No, if it happens and you know it. Sometimes it doesn't happen, you think you have it. But when it really does happen, you know. You understand birth is destroyed, the holy life has been lived, what had to be done has been done. There is no more rebirth or reappearance in any state of existence. Your deliverance is unshakable. This is your last life. Now there will be no more renewal of existence. For this is the supreme noble wisdom, named the knowledge of the destruction of all suffering. And lastly, Dhamma, a bit more, Dhammasara. This is Ajahn Vayama put this as the name of the Bhikkhuni monastery, and this I think is inscribed on the border somewhere. So this holy life does not have gain, honour and fame for its main purpose, or the attainment of virtue for its main purpose, nor the attainment of jhana as its main purpose, nor insight for its main purpose. The main purpose of the holy life is this unshakable deliverance of mind, full enlightenment. That is the goal of this holy life, its essence and culmination. It may be that you will think the teacher's instructions has ceased. Now we have no teacher. It should not be seen like this. For what I have taught and explained to you as Dhamma and discipline will at my passing be your teacher. And I thought, I've often mentioned this, that is such a powerful sort of statement. No sort of leader after I've gone. The Dhamma and the Vinaya is your teacher from now on. You should live as islands unto yourselves, being your own refuge, with no one else as your refuge. That's powerful because sometimes people take this teacher or that guru or that person and allows that person all sorts of mischief because they was my teacher. Well, the Dhamma and Vinaya is your teacher. You should live as, be your own refuge, no one else is your refuge. The Dhamma is your island, with the Dhamma is your refuge, with no other refuge. For these reasons, those matters that I have discovered and proclaimed should be thoroughly learnt by you, practiced, developed and cultivated, so this holy life may endure for a long time, that it may be for the benefit and happiness of the multitude, out of compassion for the world, for the benefit and happiness of devas and humans. Which do you think are greater, the few leaves that I hold in my hand, or all the leaves in the forest? Asked the Buddha. The leaves in the forest, came the obvious answer. Likewise, the things that I know, but I have not taught you, are many, like the leaves in the forest. Secret teachings. Whereas the things that I have taught you are few, like the leaves in my hand. And now the killer statements. The reason that I have not taught you these things is because they are irrelevant to the holy life and do not lead to enlightenment. That's a wonderful little statement there. So all you need is being given. So that actually finishes this part of the word of the Buddha. And next thing which comes up, which I love teaching, that is the gradual training. You find that in the first part of the Digha Nikaya, and it gives like an alternative to the Eightfold Path. It's not really an alternative, another way of expressing it. And when we get onto that next week, you'll also see that's one of the reasons why instead of having right effort for Samma Virya, or Samma Vayama, it's more like right restraint, because that's how it's explained in the gradual training, restraining of the senses. And I thought that's just marvellous to compare those two together, to give this right effort, energy, whatever you wish to call it, sort of a much more meaningful understanding as far as the Eightfold Path is concerned. There's not two paths. It's an Eightfold Path, but done in the form of right, the gradual training. Any questions before we finish off tonight? Okay.
Will you make any mention at any stage about the Tenfold Path?
Okay, that will be answered next week. Okay, now, the Tenfold Path, that was one of the reasons why that, when I started reading this stuff in Pali and got into the Eightfold, the Anguttara Nikaya, you were waiting to get into the Eights. Where the heck is the Eightfold Path in the Eights? You looked in it and got to the very end of the Eights, it wasn't in there. Where's the Eightfold Path? You'd expect it to be in the group of Eights. You find it in a group of Tens, with 2 extra factors added. And what was those 2 extra factors?
Wisdom.
No, it was the effects of it. I think it's called right liberation and knowledge of liberation. In other words, you were enlightened. And you knew you were enlightened. The results of the path. So that's in the Tens, not in the Eights. So I thought it was really quite neat. They put the whole thing in, because the path, if you like, jhana was the end of the path, the results which happened afterwards, 9 and 10, enlightenment, and the knowledge of enlightenment. Yeah?
Going back to the 7 factors of enlightenment. So the first one is about mindfulness. And presumably, in fact, every time you sort of try and develop your mindfulness in some way, one of the focuses, you're developing that factor, is that correct?
You are developing it, but are you developing it powerfully enough? So that's one of the reasons why you follow the instructions when the 5 hindrances disappear. That is how it gets developed. And that's one of the reasons why that it was a couple of years ago when I was over in Thailand, I got one meeting was cancelled, so I had a day off, and I asked if I could go and see Ajahn, what's his name? Jayasaro. Because he was very happy, he wanted to see me because he was finishing off the Ajahn Chah's life story translation. And he had, because I was with Ajahn Chah for 9 years, and so had a lot of understanding and experience and knowledge of what Ajahn Chah was teaching. So he interviewed me for many, many stuff which happened at that time. And some of the stuff there was fascinating, that some of the stuff which he said, no, that's not what Ajahn Chah did, it's similar, but there's a few little changes there, because I was with him at the time. So always when you have autobiographies, there's always a little bit of change here and there. But at the very end, I wanted to take my opportunity. And I said, look, I know that Ajahn Chah never used the word jhana, he's always used the word appana samadhi. He said, as far as you're concerned, you've listened to all these talks and all these tapes, when did Ajahn Chah say that the deep insights, enlightenment insights happen? And he was saying, well, it's the 2 points. Either just before appana samadhi, just before jhana, or just after. In other words, when the 5 hindrances are disappeared. And that's how I remember him saying it. But of those 2, which is the easiest? Because the 5 hindrances are gone, basically, the door into jhana is just wide open. There's no obstacles there. And if you enter that jhana, when you come out again, those 5 hindrances are gone for a longer time. And you know that they are gone. Before you go in there, the abandonment of the 5 hindrances is very unstable, uncertain. So to me, there's no reason why you shouldn't, or why you wouldn't, if you really have those 5 hindrances snuffed out for a little while, go into a jhana. And this is what we have to do. Get that jhana, go as deep as you will. Another thing which, I was just talking about this to one of the monks the other day, that so it's in the Anguttara Threes, about the obstacles to deep insight. And the deepest of those obstacles is actually Dhamma Vitakka. Thinking about Dhamma. That's an obstacle to enlightenment. When I first thought, that's interesting. And when I remember telling that to a few people, this is years and years ago, they said, that can't be true. Think about the Dhamma, it's wholesome, that's what you're supposed to do, isn't it? When you actually went in there, you weren't ready to think about the Dhamma yet. And it's something which I've noticed in myself, noticed in others. You can give the most amazing Dhamma talks to yourself just before you go into the deep meditations. It's as if it's Mara's last chance to stop you. when you think that you just got so much wisdom there, because the mind is mostly clear from the 5 hindrances, but it's not enough. And so,
the insights sort of arise, but
yeah, the insights, but they're not penetrating enough. And it's because you don't. I always say the data of the jhanas as well is important, because lots of things have vanished there. But also, it's the it's the case that the Buddha said, no, it's called a lingering obstacle. It's not sort of enough yet. So allow the. There's a few times also that people just they hindrances are just. They've been practicing really well. Most of the hindrances are so weak, but they haven't fully gone yet. And the mind is powerful. And you don't have tiredness. You can focus on something. You can think without being distracted. So you've got this really powerful mind, clear mind. You can get sort of great sort of ideas and insights, but you find afterwards it doesn't work. It's not powerful enough. Ma's last shot at trying to stop you.
Is that way Ajahn Chah might have said, no books, no need to reading, so sit a lot, walk a lot, but don't read Dhamma.
Yeah, no, he did mention a few books, but the main reason for that was that he wanted some monks who did have some sort of abilities, with scholarship, to see if they can learn. But remember, this was in the northeast of Thailand. I only had 4 years at school. So many, it was just a big burden to actually to learn all the rest of the stuff. I remember him sending these 2 monks. I was there when he sent them, they went there when they came back after a couple of years. Okay, you're really good monks. Go off to, I think it was Ratburi they were staying. And there's a good college there. Go and learn. When they came back afterwards, they not just learned a little bit of Pali and some suttas. They looked so arrogant. They learned how to be proud. And when he saw that, that was it. No one else could get sent there. Because, if you're a monk in Thailand, come from the northeast, you get some sort of education, that was what they thought. They thought they were better than other people. And that was a shame, because that stopped other monks, other good monks, learning a bit more. Okay, we can finish off now then.
Sadhu, 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 anumodami.
Sadhu. Yeah. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantan Abhivademi Suwakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Sanghang Namami. Very good. What?